Have you ever noticed how some people seem to carry an invisible weight that others cannot see? They walk through life perceiving layers of reality that remain hidden to most, sensing the unspoken truths that hover in every room, every conversation, every relationship. And perhaps you are one of them. Perhaps you know exactly what I'm talking about. The ancient Stoics understood something profound about this peculiar burden. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, once wrote in his private meditations that the impediment to action advances action, and what stands in the way becomes the way. But what happens when the impediment is not external but internal? What happens when your very ability to see clearly becomes the obstacle to your peace? This is the paradox we must explore together today, and I promise you, by the end of our time together, you'll understand not just the danger you face, but the extraordinary power you possess. Before we go deeper, I want to ask something of you. If this resonates with your experience, if you've felt this strange isolation that comes from seeing too much, take a moment now to subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who might understand, someone who lives in this same peculiar territory of heightened awareness, and leave a comment below telling me this. What is the one truth you see that others consistently miss? Your answer might help someone else feel less alone. Now let us begin properly. There is an old teaching from the Zen tradition about a monk who achieved enlightenment. When his fellow monks asked him what was different now, he said something remarkable. Before enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water. After enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water. The others were confused. What changed? They asked. And he replied, Before enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water. After enlightenment, I chop wood and carry water. Do you see the subtle difference? The actions remained the same, but the quality of consciousness transformed completely. This is what happens to those who develop the capacity for deep perception. The world doesn't change. Your ability to see the world changes, and that changes everything. Consider for a moment what it means to truly see. Not just to look, but to perceive. Not just to hear words, but to understand the silence between them. Not just to observe behavior, but to sense the hidden motivations underneath. This is not a supernatural ability. It is simply acute awareness, developed through sensitivity, through suffering, through paying attention when others look away. The Stoics called this prosauche, which means attention or vigilance. It was considered one of the fundamental spiritual exercises. Epictetus taught his students to maintain constant awareness of their thoughts, their reactions, their judgments. But here is what the ancient teachers understood that we often forget. This heightened awareness comes with a price, and the price is this. You can no longer participate easily in the collective dream. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're at a gathering, perhaps a family dinner or a corporate meeting. Everyone is engaged in what appears to be normal social interaction. They're laughing, chatting, exchanging pleasantries. The surface appears calm, even pleasant. But you, with your penetrating awareness, you see something else entirely. You notice the tension in your sister's shoulders when her husband speaks. You sense the desperation behind your colleague's enthusiastic presentation. You feel the undercurrent of resentment that flows beneath the polite conversation. You perceive the masks everyone wears, the roles everyone plays, the truths everyone avoids. And here is where the danger begins its work. Because once you see these things, you cannot unsee them. The knowledge becomes part of you, inseparable from your experience. It's like learning that your favorite childhood story was actually a carefully constructed lie. Even if you want to believe the story again, even if you try to forget what you learned, the innocence is gone forever. The ancient Greek philosophers had a concept called aletheia, which is usually translated as truth, but literally means unforgetting or unconcealing. Truth is not something you acquire. It is something that gets revealed, uncovered, exposed. And once it is exposed, you cannot cover it again. You cannot go back to not knowing. This is the first danger of clear seeing, the loss of innocence, the end of comfortable unconsciousness. But it goes deeper still. When you see what others refuse to see, you become a living reminder of what they're avoiding. Your very presence becomes uncomfortable for them. Not because you're saying anything or doing anything wrong, but simply because you represent awareness in a context that requires unconsciousness to function. Think about why people get angry at whistleblowers. Not because the whistleblower created the corruption they're exposing, but because they're making it impossible to continue pretending the corruption doesn't exist. Your clarity works the same way. You make it difficult for people to maintain their comfortable fictions, and they resent you for it, often without even understanding why. The ancient Buddhist texts speak of this phenomenon as well. There's a story about a man who escapes from a cave where he and others have been imprisoned since childhood, seeing only shadows on the wall and believing those shadows to be reality. When he emerges into the sunlight and sees the real world, he's overwhelmed. But when he returns to the cave to free his fellow prisoners and tell them about the real world, they don't believe him. In fact, they become hostile. They say he's been corrupted, that he's lost his mind, that the shadows are obviously reality, and his talk of a sun and a surface world is dangerous nonsense. Plato, who recorded this allegory, understood something crucial. Most people prefer the comfortable lie to the uncomfortable truth, and they will attack those who threaten their comfortable lies. This is your second danger, not just isolation, but active hostility from those whose unconsciousness you inadvertently threaten. I remember a woman who once consulted with me. She was highly intuitive, capable of reading people with remarkable accuracy. She could walk into a room and within minutes understand the dynamics, the alliances, the hidden conflicts, the unspoken desires. This was not guesswork. She was simply able to perceive what was already there, but usually ignored, and it was destroying her life. Every relationship she tried to build eventually collapsed. Friends would distance themselves, saying she was too intense, too analytical, too much. Romantic partners would initially be attracted to her depth, but eventually feel exposed and vulnerable, as if she could see straight through them. And she could. At work, she was simultaneously valued for her insights and resented for her perception. Colleagues would seek her advice privately, but exclude her from social gatherings. They wanted her wisdom without having to deal with her awareness. She asked me a question I've been asked many times since. Is there something wrong with me? Should I try to see less, to be more like everyone else, to turn off this perception? And I told her what I'm going to tell you now. No, there is nothing wrong with you. The perception itself is not the problem. The problem is that you haven't learned how to carry it without being crushed by it. The Stoic philosophers, particularly Seneca, wrote extensively about the burden of knowledge. He said that the wise man must learn to live among fools without becoming embittered, to see clearly without despair, to understand human weakness without contempt. This is the art you must master. Not the art of seeing less, but the art of seeing clearly while maintaining your equanimity, your peace, your center. But how? That's the question, isn't it? How do you maintain awareness without being destroyed by what you're aware of? This brings us to the third danger, perhaps the most insidious of all. When you constantly perceive the emotional states and hidden truths of everyone around you, when you're perpetually absorbing the unspoken and the unfelt, you begin to lose track of what actually belongs to you. Your boundaries become permeable. You walk into a space feeling fine and leave feeling anxious, sad, angry, or depleted. And you have no idea whether these feelings are yours or whether you've simply absorbed them from the environment like a sponge soaking up water. The ancient Taoists understood this danger well. They spoke about the importance of maintaining your center, your dantian, even while moving through the world. They created practices specifically designed to help sensitive individuals maintain their energetic boundaries while remaining open and aware. meditation, qigong, spending time in nature. All of these were not just spiritual practices, but practical technologies for managing heightened sensitivity. In modern psychological terms, we call this empath overwhelm or boundary dissolution. But the phenomenon is ancient. Sensitive people have always faced this challenge: how to be open enough to perceive clearly while being protected enough not to be overwhelmed by what you perceive. Let me give you an image that might help. Imagine you're standing at the edge of an ocean. The water represents all the emotional and psychological content of the world around you: the suffering, the joy, the confusion, the fear, the desire, all of it. Now, there are two ways to relate to this ocean. The first way is to dive in completely, to immerse yourself, to let the water engulf you. You'll certainly feel everything very intensely this way. You'll know the ocean intimately, but you'll also be at risk of drowning. You'll lose your capacity to breathe, to think clearly, to maintain your own identity separate from the water. The second way is to remain on the shore, protected, dry, safe. You can observe the ocean from a distance, analyze it, think about it. But you won't really know it. You won't feel its temperature, its currents, its power. You'll be safe but disconnected. Neither of these approaches works for someone with your capacity for perception. You need a third way. You need to learn to be like a skilled swimmer who can enter the water, feel it, move through it, understand it intimately, but who never forgets how to return to the shore. Who maintains awareness of where the water ends and they begin. Who can be in the ocean without becoming the ocean. This is the essential skill. This is what the ancient wisdom traditions were trying to teach. Not how to shut down your sensitivity, but how to have clear boundaries while remaining open. How to perceive without absorbing. How to understand without taking on. How to see clearly without losing yourself in what you see. The danger is real. I don't want to minimize it. People with your capacity for perception do suffer more than most. They experience deeper loneliness, more profound confusion about their own identity, greater exhaustion from navigating social situations that others find effortless. But here's what I want you to understand. This suffering is not inevitable. It's not the price you must pay for awareness. It's the price you pay for unintegrated awareness, for perception without wisdom, for seeing without understanding how to work with what you see. Now, I want to pause here and ask you to do something. Take a moment to reflect on your own experience. When was the last time your perception caused you suffering? When did you see something clearly that others missed and it cost you something? A relationship, perhaps? A sense of belonging? Your peace of mind? Write it in the comments below. Share your story. Because I promise you, someone else reading this needs to know they're not alone in this experience. And by sharing, you create connection where there was isolation. You build community where there was loneliness. Let's continue. We've explored three dangers: the loss of innocence, the hostility of others, and the dissolution of boundaries. But there's a fourth danger that we must address, and it's perhaps the most subtle and most destructive of all. When you see clearly, when you perceive what others miss, you face a terrible temptation. The temptation to fix everything you see, to save everyone from their unconsciousness, to correct every dysfunction, to heal every wound, to wake up everyone who's sleeping. This is not compassion, this is compulsion, and it will destroy you if you don't recognize it for what it is. The Buddha taught about this in his discussion of right action. He said there's a difference between compassionate response and compulsive reaction. Compassion arises from wisdom and operates according to what's actually helpful. Compulsion arises from anxiety and operates according to your need to control outcomes. When you try to fix everything you see, when you make yourself responsible for awakening others, when you cannot rest until everyone around you sees what you see, you're not operating from wisdom. You're operating from a deep anxiety, a fear that if you don't do something, something terrible will happen. And more than that, You're disrespecting the autonomy and the process of others. You're essentially saying, I know better than you what you need. I know when you should wake up. I will decide when you're ready to see the truth. This is not wisdom. This is arrogance dressed up as concern. The ancient Stoics were very clear about this. They taught the principle of ta ephemin and ta uk ephemin, what is up to us and what is not up to us. Your perceptions are up to you. How you respond to what you perceive is up to you. Your own growth, your own consciousness, your own choices, these are up to you. But other people's growth, other people's consciousness, other people's readiness to see what they've been avoiding, these are not up to you. Not even a little bit. When you try to take responsibility for things that are not yours to control, you create enormous suffering for yourself, and you often harm the very people you're trying to help. Because people change when they're ready to change, not when you need them to change. Problems resolve when the conditions are right, not when you've decided it's time for them to resolve. Consciousness develops at its own pace, according to each person's unique journey. You cannot force this process. You cannot rush it. You cannot make it happen on your schedule. All you can do is live your own life with integrity, maintain your own awareness with wisdom, and create conditions that might support others' growth when and if they're ready. This is what the mystics call detachment. Not cold indifference, but wise non-attachment to outcomes you cannot control. The Bhagavad Gita teaches this beautifully. It says you have a right to your actions, but not to the fruits of your actions. You can offer your perception, your wisdom, your presence, but you cannot control whether others receive it, accept it, or benefit from it. That is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is only to remain true to your own seeing, while allowing others the dignity of their own process. When you understand this, when you really integrate this teaching, everything changes. Not because you stop seeing clearly, not because you stop caring about others, but because you stop exhausting yourself trying to control things that were never yours to control in the first place. You become like a lighthouse. You stand firm on your foundation. You shine your light clearly and steadily. And those who need the light, those who are ready for it, they will see it and navigate by it. But you're not chasing ships around the ocean trying to force them to use your light. You're not dimming your light to avoid making others uncomfortable. You're not destroying yourself with anxiety about all the ships you cannot reach. You're simply being what you are, offering what you have, and trusting that this is enough. This is the wisdom that must accompany clear seeing. This is how you transform danger into gift. But I know what you're thinking. This sounds good in theory, but how do you actually do it? How do you maintain this centered awareness while living in a world that constantly pulls at your attention, your energy, your peace? Let me offer you some practical wisdom, drawn from ancient teachings and validated by experience. First, you must learn the art of solitude, real solitude. Not just being physically alone, but psychological solitude. Time when you're completely disconnected from other people's emotional and mental content. Time when you can settle, like muddy water becoming clear, until you can see what's actually yours and what you've been carrying for others. The ancient hermits and monks understood this. They didn't retreat from the world because they hated people. They retreated because they understood that without regular time in solitude, the sensitive soul becomes contaminated by the psychic noise of collective life. You need silence to hear your own voice. You need stillness to feel your own feelings. You need space to remember who you are beneath all the perceptions you carry. Second, you must develop what I call conscious distance. This is not the distance of cold withdrawal. This is not building walls or shutting down your heart. This is maintaining awareness of where you end and others begin. It's like the swimmer in the ocean who remains aware of the shore even while swimming far from it. There's a practice from the Stoic tradition that can help with this. It's called the view from above. You imagine yourself rising above your immediate situation, seeing it from a great height. From this perspective, you can observe what's happening without being consumed by it. You can perceive the patterns, the dynamics, the truths, but you're not drowning in them. You maintain perspective. Practice this regularly. When you're in a situation that threatens to overwhelm you, mentally step back, rise above it, see it from a distance. Not to disconnect or dissociate, but to maintain perspective, to remember that you are the observer, not just the observed. Third, you must learn discernment about when to speak and when to remain silent. This is perhaps the most difficult skill of all, because sometimes speaking the truth you perceive is absolutely necessary. It's an act of integrity, of courage, of service. But sometimes speaking what you see is simply indulging your compulsion to fix, to control, to prove that you're right. How do you tell the difference? Ask yourself these questions before you speak. Is this truth mine to share, or does it belong to someone else's journey? Will speaking this truth actually help the situation, or will it just make me feel better for having said it? Am I speaking from wisdom and compassion, or from anxiety and compulsion? Is this the right time, the right place, the right way to share this perception? If I stay silent, what happens? If I speak, what happens? The Buddha taught that right speech must meet 3 criteria. It must be true, it must be kind, and it must be timely. All 3, not just true, not just kind, but all 3 together. This is the standard you must hold yourself to. Fourth, you must find others who see as you see. This is not optional. It's essential. You cannot maintain this level of awareness in complete isolation. You need at least a few people who understand, who perceive what you perceive, who don't require you to pretend to see less than you do. These people are rare, I won't lie to you. Most people don't live at this level of awareness, but they exist. And when you find them, when you can finally be fully seen by someone who doesn't need you to be less perceptive to feel comfortable, it changes everything. You realize you're not crazy, you're not alone. You're simply awake in a world that mostly sleeps. And there are others awake too. Seek these people. Cultivate these relationships. Protect these connections. They are precious beyond measure. Fifth, and finally, you must develop a spiritual practice that helps you process what you perceive. Prayer, meditation, journaling, art, music, time in nature, whatever form it takes, you need a regular practice that allows you to digest your experiences, to metabolize what you perceive, to transform raw awareness into integrated wisdom. Without this, your perceptions will simply accumulate like unprocessed food, creating toxicity in your system. With this practice, your perceptions become the raw material for your own growth, your own deepening, your own transformation. The ancient alchemists understood this principle. They taught that base metals could be transformed into gold through the right process. Your difficult perceptions, your painful awarenesses, your challenging insights, these are the base metals. Your spiritual practice is the alchemical process, and the gold that emerges is wisdom, compassion, peace, and the capacity to hold your awareness without being destroyed by it. Now, let me bring all of this together. The danger of seeing what others don't is real. It can isolate you, exhaust you, overwhelm you, make you a target for others' defensiveness, and tempt you into the impossible task of trying to fix everyone and everything. But it doesn't have to be dangerous. Not if you learn to work with your awareness consciously. Not if you develop the wisdom to perceive without controlling, to see without grasping, to understand without demanding. The ancient teachers from every tradition understood something profound. They understood that consciousness itself is not the problem. Unconscious consciousness, unintegrated awareness, wisdom without boundaries, perception without protection, these are the problems. Your task is not to see less. Your task is to learn to carry what you see with grace, with strength, with wisdom. To be clear without being crushed, to be aware without being overwhelmed, to perceive deeply without losing yourself in what you perceive. This is the hero's journey for the sensitive soul, not the journey of conquering dragons or saving kingdoms, but the quieter, deeper journey of learning to be fully conscious in an unconscious world without being destroyed by the burden. And here is the beautiful paradox at the heart of all this. When you stop trying to fix everyone, when you release your compulsion to wake up the world, when you simply maintain your own awareness with wisdom and boundaries, you become genuinely helpful in a way you never were before. Because people can feel the difference between someone who's trying to change them and someone who simply sees them clearly and allows them to be exactly as they are. The former creates resistance and defensiveness. The latter creates safety and possibility. When you're no longer unconsciously demanding that others see what you see, they can actually begin to see on their own. When you're no longer trying to rescue them from their unconsciousness, they can begin to wake up in their own time. Your presence itself becomes the teaching, not through what you say or do, but through the quality of consciousness you embody. This is true service, this is real wisdom. This is how you transform the danger into a gift, not just for yourself, but for everyone whose life you touch. So I want to leave you with this final thought. You who see what others don't, you who perceive the hidden and sense the unspoken, you who carry this strange burden of heightened awareness, you are not broken. You are not too much. You are not a problem that needs to be fixed. You are awake. And yes, being awake in a sleeping world is difficult. It comes with real challenges, real dangers, real costs. But it also comes with extraordinary gifts, the gift of depth, of authenticity, of truth, the gift of being able to live consciously in a world that mostly runs on autopilot, the gift of helping others, when they're ready, to wake up as well. Your task is not to dim your light. Your task is to learn to shine it wisely, to carry it without being burned by it, to offer it without forcing anyone to look at it before they're ready. The world needs people like you, people who can see clearly, people who can hold awareness without being destroyed by it, people who can be lighthouses in the darkness, steady and bright and unmovable. So subscribe if you found value here. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your own experience of seeing what others miss, and remember, the danger is real, but so is the gift. Your job is simply to learn the wisdom that transforms one into the other. Stay awake, stay wise, and know that you're not walking this path alone.